What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting live stream for this week's API. We're going to go through what you need to know about this golf course and, of course, this event to go out there, play some lineups, go out there, bet a few outrights. Whatever questions that you guys have, well, feel free to go ahead and throw those down in chat. If you're watching this on replay, you're still welcome here as well. Go ahead, smash that like button on the way in here, and let's go out there and get ready to crush it this week. I was out there on the golf course, a lot to talk about with what I saw during the Pro-Am. But first off, welcome on in. We have Barry down there, Barry R in the chat, warning about a little bit of Minwoo chalk. I agree with you there. Might want to be a little wary of that, especially because it's going to be 20% plus owned. What's going on, Abruzzi? Hopefully you're having a solid Wednesday evening. I woke up this morning with not a lot on my agenda. Wasn't like any around the house sort of like chores I had to do. There weren't like a bunch of different sheets I had to do for DFS, right? Already had a lot of my stuff done. So I thought to myself, like, why not go to the Pro-Am, right? It is about a 3-hour drive with traffic up there to Orlando, but I had a little hot rod. That's my car, of course. And we got her up there in about 2 hours. So you can do the math on how fast you think I probably went. But on the way back, took a little bit longer, but was well worth it. Was able to go up there, catch a lot of the golf course that I was looking for. There were a few specific things that I wanted to check on. And then on top of that, was hoping to just get a scoop on some of the players. So I did a lot of range watching. I did a few holes of golf. I walked Jordan Spieth. I saw play a few holes. Aberg. Who else did I see? Xander Schauffele, Patrick Cantlay were all players that I checked in on. Just as that casual golf fan, right? Didn't have a whole lot to do today, so why not? Luke List is coming for it all. He hit it well in the range, but it was more so how he conducted himself, right? It wasn't so much that he was hitting it better than other players. He's referring to my tweet that I put out earlier today that he looked like the clear alpha dog out there. He was so intentional, right? He was in rhythm. He wasn't getting on his phone in between shots. He wasn't getting yapped at by a bunch of different people while he was hitting golf balls. He was there. He knew what he was going to do. And I mean, at least from the bystander perspective, he not only conducted himself better than the other players, but it looked like he was playing better too. So I think that's just something that he does, right? He's that sort of player. And there are definitely a few guys out there, I'm not going to call them all out, that were the exact opposite, that were exasperated after every shot, that were asking for advice after literally every golf swing. And I have to imagine that those are the players that are grinding a little bit more, right? Trying to find their game a little bit. Whereas if you're on autopilot like List, it might be a good thing. We'll have to see, right? We'll see how that works out this week. I could see it going both ways. Should be on Hideki with the putter working. Well, he didn't play the practice round today, so something that we're going to go through later, but I'm actually completely off of Hideki. I wanted to play him at lower ownership, but he is dealing with a back injury, so I would be a little bit wary there. Who is the one guy that you're playing this week, and who are the two players that you wouldn't want to play? We'll talk about that when we actually go through the player pool, but yeah, I'll give you a few names there, and especially that I don't want to play. I've got plenty of fades, so I'll give you your top two like you're asking, but we'll have plenty of fades. What's going on? Dave says you've got outrights on Young, Keegan, Willie Z, Scott, and Decky. Okay, I like some of those names. Does that mean it's a Rory or Scotty wire to wire? Probably, right? That's how it works for me. What's going on, Brant? What's going on, Nick? I'll catch up on you guys a little bit later on in terms of questions. Just welcome on into chat. We have a Who Day down there. What's going on? Jonathan down there too. Welcome on into the live chat. But what I want to start with here is what I saw on the golf course, which there were really two things that I wanted to check in on. First off was how long the rough was, and then second off, whether this golf course was going to play soft. A couple reasons for that, right? First off, API is known for having some of the lushest rough in all the PGA Tour. It's usually pretty long, but on top of being long, it is extremely dense. I'm not sure if it's the way they overseed it, the way they maintain it. Either way, it is the most penal rough on the PGA Tour almost every single year. That or Memorial, right, is up there number 1 and 2. It's going to be that same way. I sent a picture on my Twitter feed. If you haven't seen it yet, the rough is about like 4 or 5 inches long, and I'm wearing some high top shoes out there to give you a little bit of that perspective. So it's going to be extremely penal when you miss the fairway, and I'd say it's almost better if you miss far offline as opposed to missing like 1-2 yards off, so that you can get into the trampled down rough where the fans are, where all of the different crowds, different golf carts, right, or riding around the golf course, all of that rough is a lot easier to hit out of than if you hardly miss the fairway. Because when you hardly miss the fairway, none of that is touched by spectators, and it is like 4 inches of lush, overseeded rough. So that factor was something that I was looking for. That was going to be there, right, out there for this year. But on top of that, the soft golf course was kind of there, but it wasn't as soft as maybe I was expecting. I thought we were going to get dartboards like what we had at the Cognizant. Down here in South Florida, we've gotten a ton of rain over the last 2 weeks. It looks like it's been a little bit more mild up there towards the Orlando area. Reason why I say that is the fairways were soft, but you got a little bit of rollout. If you were hitting a low tee shot, your high hitters like a Rory and Aberg were getting next to no run out just because of the different ball flight that they have. But into greens, even wedges, even like 9 irons were not spinning back. You were not getting that zip unless you were going full bore at a degreed wedge. So if you're on like a sub 400 yard par 4, you can probably spin a wedge into those hole locations. But if it's like a 420 yard par 5 and you're hitting a 9 iron or a pitching wedge, you're not going to have that kind of spin control. So that's something that is going to make this course more difficult. Something that this course is known for is having those firm green complexes. And I think we're going to get that this year. I think on Thursday with the low winds, combined with the fact that it's still a little soft, right? I mentioned that it's just soft-ish out there. That's going to help for Thursday, probably for Friday as well. You're going to see some lower scoring. But by the time we get to the weekend where the winds might kick up, these greens are going to bake out as the weekend goes on. They're not expecting rain until I think it's Friday afternoon at the earliest, and that's like a low percentage chance. So there's a good chance we don't get rain the whole way until Sunday. If that happens, this course is going to be extremely difficult by the weekend. They're not planning on cutting the rough. They're planning on getting these greens as firm and fast as humanly possible. And even if the winds don't kick up on the weekend, you're going to see a well over par scoring average. So don't think that this is going to be a birdie fest. Do not expect there to be world record scoring at this API. It's just too long of a golf course, right? It's got too long of rough to be completely taken advantage of. With that being said, we've had rounds where the scoring average has been slightly under par. I think there's a good chance for Thursday that we see that. So in terms of our weather angle, taking a look at the first 2 days, Thursday is going to be ideal whether you're starting in the morning or you're one of the middle or latter half tee times. You can see that we have sub 6 mile an hour sustained winds pretty much for the entire day, and the wind gusts are almost non-existent. On top of that, it's sunny conditions. It's pretty warm down here in Florida. I can tell you that's hot and humid out there, which is extremely annoying as a spectator, right? You just sweat like absolute buckets out there, but it does mean that the golf ball is going to go a long way, right, with all of that hot air and that humidity. So I think you're going to see perfect scoring out there tomorrow. And compared to some of the last 3-4 seasons at the API, the best scoring average that we've had would be about 1 under par. I think it was 1.13 under par, which was, I think it was 2022 round 3, something like that. Maybe it was 2021 round 3, a few years ago in the 3rd round. Other than that, I think it's like half a stroke under par, like 0.53 under you've seen for an isolated round at around Bay Hill. You're going to see something in that range, right? One of the better scoring averages that we've had at this golf course. It's the weather that's going to feed into that. It's the fact that they've had some rain over the last few weeks and the field strength, right? It's an elevated field. This is the first time where literally all of the world's best players are going to be teeing it up here. When you give them perfect conditions and you have all the world's best, you're going to see a lot of guys go low. So expect to see maybe a couple 5-6 under par rounds tomorrow. I think John Rahm was able to get to 7 under par at this course just last year. You might see that matched out there for Thursday. But even with that posted score, right, the winning score was 9 under par by the end of the week. So don't think that this is going to be a birdie fest, right? After you see some scoring out there tomorrow, that's what happens a lot of years at this golf tournament. And then as the week goes on, you just see carnage unfold over the next 3 days. So that's probably going to be that same kind of narrative and we see here in 2024. And if we go over here to the NAM model and take a look at Friday, you'll see that the winds kick up a little bit. Now, it's not like they're calling for 25 mile an hour wind gusts. It's not even like they're calling for 15 to 20 mile an hour sustained winds, like you get a lot of times down here in Central and South Florida. But they are calling for at least slightly worse conditions. And you can see they have some rain mixed in there a little bit overnight. Also, potentially a little bit of rain there in the afternoon. If that ends up coming through, that could end up changing the dynamic, which is why I think, if anything, we might want to take these PM guys, right? The guys going out a little bit later tomorrow, because we know all day is going to be perfect, right? Out there for Thursday, no matter which model it is, over here on windy.com, you're talking about sub 7 mile an hour winds. I mean, it's literally perfect for what you'd want to play golf in. For Friday, though, right, there's a lot more variance. There are storms. There could be a delay, right? If one of these is a thunderstorm out there on Friday afternoon, there's at least enough variance out there on Friday where if I'm just going to try and blindly take a weather edge, because as of right now, I don't see one, right? Looking at these two weather forecasts, I would want the guys going out slightly later tomorrow and earlier out there on Friday, because in general, right, and this is just a general statement about Florida weather, normally the mornings are a lot better than the afternoons, right? Normally in the mornings, you have lower winds, right? The wind gusts and the sustained winds are normally a little bit calmer. And on top of that, it's not letting the course bake out, right? Overnight, they put water on the track. You have a little bit of dew this time of year sometimes that comes out and adds some humidity. That is a huge factor on why guys go low, right? In the morning wave down here in Florida, you have receptive greens, especially when they're greens that are firm and fast, like what we have here at the API. Even on a day with slight overcast, by the afternoon, they have a little bit of bounce to them. And typically, right, the winds are slightly higher. Now, if we take a look at this forecast, you'll see that they're calling for pretty flat weather. Again, those storms could add a whole nother level of uncertainty. But if I was going to blindly play weather edge, it'd be taking some of the later guys tomorrow and then hoping that Friday morning they catch the better end of the conditions. With that being said, am I stacking any lineups? I'm not this week. I'm going to have some unintentional stacks for either wave, just with the way that I'm putting together my lineups. But I'm not actively stacking either wave, which is kind of rare, right? I'm a 150 maxer, so I have a lot of lineups that I can work with to go out there and invest into each wave. It's just I can't split it this week, right? I don't really want to go out there and invest 20% of my lineups into either edge, but I could see doing that, right? If you want to go out there and just blindly try and find something, I think you could try and do it on a week like this, but my best guess is that this is a washout, right? That trying to take the early guys tomorrow or the late guys tomorrow probably doesn't give you a massive advantage. You might see like a 0.2, 0.3 shot difference, but for me, it's not enough to make me go out there and actively try and play lineups. So that's my take on the weather. I think the most important factor is going to be that tomorrow is going to be the day to get after the golf course. You want your players well under par tomorrow, right? You don't want somebody to shoot a 73, a 74 tomorrow. It's not like their week's over if they go over there and shoot over par, but this is going to be by far the best chance to make birdies, right? If you're going to make 7, 8 birdies in a round, it's going to be Thursday, right? Maybe Friday if the winds stay down right over there for the second round of action. But for sure, you're going to see some low scoring out there. So your guys in DFS have got to get out there and get after it early. So I could even see, and with that being said, right, if tomorrow is going to be the best day of scoring, maybe you want the really early starters, right? Maybe you want them in the absolute nutted conditions, right, out there early on a Thursday morning, because I can see it going both ways. I'm not investing, right, into either side of the draw when it comes to DFS. An added little complication there, of course, is that they're going up 2 sums off of hole 1. There are no defined waves, right? There's no, gap in tee times that we have over here. So even if you were going to try and find that little weather edge, it would be minuscule at best, right? You don't have that 3-4 hour gap in tee times, which is really what polarizes it from most of those main slate perspectives. These signature events have to be handled a little bit differently. So if anyone has any questions on the weather, perhaps which wave I would go with over the other. Again, I think PM AM would be maybe the wave to go out there and try and stack. But just like I just said, I could see the argument for the other side, right? Trying to take the guys in the nutted conditions tomorrow morning. Let me go ahead, share my screen, bring up our DFS projections, and we'll talk through some of the strategy for this week, as well as some of your questions down there in chat. So let's see where we left off. So what's going on, Terry? Hopefully you're having a solid week yourself. Nick says, what do I think about an ace at plus 130? There's some tough par 3s. I'd probably stay away from it in either direction, right? I'm sure the no is like minus 170 for juice or something like that. Probably a little bit of a sucker bet, but if you want to sweat, maybe you take an ace, right? You just hope for somebody to get it done. Victor Hovland made one here a few years ago. I ended up seeing that one. One of the first aces that I've seen in person. I've seen crazier things happen. They're tough par 3s. I'll tell you that much, right? But you do have the world's best players here. So let me get back to some of the questions from before. So the question about Hideki, I want to circle back on that one. Underdog Golf put out a report saying that he did not play in the practice round. I didn't see him out there at all, so that's not surprising to me that he wasn't able to go out there and play. Coming off a win in the past, he's done this, right? He said that he's had a back injury. He said that he hasn't played the Pro-Am on a Wednesday and then ended up playing the golf tournament. Now, in recent memory, at least if memory serves me correctly, he hasn't played that well after he's had that kind of news. But yeah, I'm staying away. I was kind of iffy on him to begin with. And then after I saw that, I was like, no, thank you. Who was the one guy I'm playing this week? Well, if I had to give you one guy that I'm playing, it's Victor Hovland. And it's the course history. It's the fact that I think he's lower owned than he probably should be, right about like 19% ownership. I love Vic. He was one of my first clicks of the week. I'd also say Cam Young, but Cam Young's a little bit more chalky. He's $8,700. Probably one of those two be some of my top plays. And who am I definitely not playing? So this is a good segue into our general DFS strategy. Our strategy for a week like this, when we have a course with carnage, a lot of water balls out there, has to be to fade a lot of the chalk, right? And I already know we had comments about Minwoo and his ownership, right? Up there at already over 20% ownership I've got him at. In fact, I think I've got him at like 24% ownership. Let's double check. I've got him at 24.1% projected ownership. Guys like Minwoo, I love, right? In fact, you guys probably saw me following him, right? Out there on Monday when he was trying to go out there and win the Honda / Cognizant. Well, I don't love him enough to play him in half my lineups, right? To try and get leverage at 24.1%. And on a golf course with all this water, it's so tough. I mean, if you're missing the short stuff, this rough is going to eat you up. It just feels like a lot of the chalk is going to miss. And that's what you've seen at this event. That's what you see at a lot of these Florida golf courses is the game theory approach really hitting at a lot of these events. And it's already something that you want to do week to week, right? Go out there, try and find your ownership pivots, right? Try and find your stands on guys you're going to get well over the field on. But at a golf course where even the best players can eject, you want to lean into that even more. So, I was picking on Minwoo there because he's like 24.1%, but there are a lot of players you could say that about, right? Where if they're getting even just a little bit of ownership steam, I'm going to make the pivot in almost every circumstance. Now, the only two players I would say that are immune to that role would be a Scotty Scheffler and a Rory, right? They're chalky because they're at the top of the board. They're world number 1 and 2, right? People are going to play the best two players in the world. The chalk up top, and I would even extend that down here to the guys in like the 8 and 9K range. The chalk up here from like $8,600 and up, in a lot of cases is not that egregious, right? They're higher owned because they're at the top of the board. The chalk that you really want to worry about this week is this high 7K chalk. There's a lot of it up here that I think are ticking time bombs. Even the lower end of the 7s, you've got some chalk down there, but anyone down here in the 6K range that is 10% plus owned, you better absolutely love them to go out there and play him in lineups. So obviously my boy, the chef, right, Minwoo Lee, was the guy that I first pointed out, but like even in EVR, right? Spoiler alert, I'm playing EVR. I do love EVR this week. If let's say Minwoo was 11.5%, I would probably be playing him too, right? Because I do like him at this golf course, but I'm not going to play a guy that's 24.1%. In fact, EVR is probably a guy that most people should be fading too, right? If you're not somebody that loves him as much as I do, right, thinks that he's due for a win, that's essentially what I think. With how he's hitting the ball, how he's playing, he's going to go out there and spike a victory at some point. So I'm going to back him until that happens, right? So even if he's in this strong of a field, right, he doesn't have to win, right, to be optimal at $6,600. So I like EVR. I'm on him, right? But if you don't like him like that, right, if you weren't on him on a Monday like I was, don't play him at 11.5% ownership. That's crazy. That's ludicrous when there are guys around him that are 3-4% owned, right? Like a Danny McCarthy, a Cam Davis, a Austin Eckert, for example, right? Your winner from last week is half the ownership. So this is a week to take your stands, right? To go out there and fade a lot of that chalk down low and just try and find a few guys to cross out, right? I think it's easier this week to go out there and cross out some of that chalk first and then circle back and figure out who you're going to play. So just a few guys. I know we had a question, right, about like two guys I would never play. Minwoo is because of the ownership, right? 25%. I do like him at this course. So it's a little bit of an uneasy fade, right? I don't feel great about it, but it's just out of pure game theory, out of pure principle, right? Going out there and fading him is the right thing to do. And then a Jake Knapp, right? Jake Knapp, I think the pendulum has gone far too far in one direction. Like a lot of people just looking at him like an absolute stud. these guys, like, I'm expecting the world from him. I think he's going to be a fixture in the playoffs for the foreseeable future, right? Kind of like a Sanjay M. I see him on that kind of trajectory. But these guys come down to earth rather quickly too. So if he's going to be your highest owned player, right, up here at the top end of the 7K range at a golf course that normally requires experience to go out there and really play well at, and it gobbles you up, right? If you don't have a really good short game, we have no idea, right, how he's going to translate to these kind of conditions. And he's the guy that people have the most confidence in, right? So we'll use Knapp as a fade, also Minwoo as a fade, right? Two guys that played really well at the Cognizant Classic. Two guys that I think are going to play really well here this year. So both of them, even Knapp, right? Minwoo, of course, I don't feel very great about fading him, but same thing with Knapp. But out of principle, they're guys that you should probably avoid this week, right? And you can extend that kind of theory to a lot of the other higher owned players, right? So like, if you don't love a Harris English, right? You don't love a Keegan Bradley, right? These are guys that you can easily cross off. Now, I'll just say out of these two, one of them I do love this week, and one of them I am playing in some of my lineups. But if that's not the case, right, cross out the other, right? You should not be playing all the chalk up here. Adam Scott, guys like Benny Ann, also getting some attention. Corey Connors, a little bit chalky down here in the 7K range. There are a lot of clear spots down here that you can try and either win or lose the week on, and that's how you should be handling GPPs. If you want to spread your exposure out a little bit up top, right, if you don't want to be as selective with your players up here in the 9 and 10K range, I understand it when you have all the world's best playing, right? It's hard to choose from all these studs that you have up here. So in terms of like guys from Jordan Spieth up, right, Jordan up to Scotty Scheffler, let me see, I'm playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. 5 of those top 7 players I'm using in my player pool, which is a lot more than usual, right? I'm definitely spreading out my exposure a little bit thinner than what I'd like. But the reason for that is this is a elite tier event, especially if it's going to play with that long rough, a little bit bouncy with the greens. I think you're going to see an elite tier player win. So that's the game theory angle. That's, a few of the players that I like, right? Obviously, like guys like Victor Hovland, the guys that you should be fading or considering maybe getting away from or under the field on are some of this chalky 6, 7, and even 8K players. Let's see what's going on, Dave. So yeah, the outrights from before, Scotty or Rory, I have to say I like both of them this week. I didn't bet either one. I'm in the same boat as you. I took a lot of shots, right, on guys starting a little bit further back. And it feels like it might be a Rory or Scotty week. It really does. Nick Taylor from the top rope. Okay. Any thoughts on him this week? I love the approach play. So I'm in a lockstep with you there. I love some of the recent form metrics for Nick Taylor. I don't love the course fit, but we've seen guys shake that, right? Go out there and still perform at courses that don't necessarily fit their game. Like Ryan Harmon has played well at US Opens before, which is kind of it just doesn't make sense, right? For somebody that hits it so short, but I could see it. He's just playing really solid golf, and it's not like he's chalky, so I'm okay with that. Any idea why the DK salaries sometimes differ a lot between first round showdown and classic? So I don't know why. I'm assuming it's because they have a different algorithm, right? They maybe use average fantasy score a little bit more when they're looking at the showdown stuff. Probably something like that, but I don't know. Burns for the win. Okay, that's good to know. Long rough at Bay Hill is the best Bay Hill. Agreed with you. The rough will test Willie Z's back. Agreed with that. Pin locations just dropped. Let's go. We'll take a look at that with our prop section. But thank you for the heads up on that. That's good. You keep cutting in and out. Just a heads up. It might be on your end, but if anyone else is seeing that, go ahead and let me know down in chat. My guess is that it's probably a connection issue. Jack Fisher says, just from a TV/viewers point, do we need the likes of Scheffler, Rory, Spieth, JT slugging it out come Sunday afternoon? I mean, that'd be great, Jack. Last year, that's what it was, right? I mean, it was Kurt Kitayama holding off Rory, Scotty, Spieth, a lot of those top tier players. I don't know if we need that though, right? If there's 1, 2 guys up there, right, elite tier guys that are battling it out, I think we'd feel pretty good about it. What we don't want to have happen is a runaway winner, right? Somebody winning by like 6 or 7 shots. That's probably what the tour wants to avoid. Are you crazy for taking Day outright? Now, I don't think you're crazy. I think that is a bold take, though. You're getting decent odds on him, that's for sure. In a field like this, especially, right? You're getting some pretty good odds. I like him more for DFS, though. He's getting some attention too. Surprisingly, I was hoping he'd be like sub 10% owned, but he is 12.7% per my last ownership run. I don't know. He fits the course well. He has that high ball flight that a lot of people are looking for this week. Thoughts on Hogard? High ball flight, high pedigree player. I like him a whole lot. And I think he plays well in these major championship type of setups because of the fact that he has a high ball speed, can get out of that rough. Ricky for a fast start Thursday, first round leader. I think that's a good market to play him in. I think showdown for Ricky makes a lot of sense. First round leader would make a lot of sense for Ricky Fowler too. For one and done, you're looking at Cam Young, or at least you used Cam Young this week, and then Scotty at the players. Or would you use Scotty this week? I think you could use him at either event. The purse is going to be really decent, right? At either event, right? You have the elevated field purses. Also, the player's purse is boosted. I'm okay with that. I don't think you have to change it up. I like your strategy. How did Keegan look today? I didn't see him much. I think I saw him hit one golf shot, and he hit the green. He hit it to about like 10, 15 feet. So good, I guess. What's going on, Samuel? Abruzzi says, Denny McCarthy ready to pop off. I think he's a good course fit. So Memorial is maybe not my top 3 comp, right? It's not up there in the ones that we went over in the video, but Memorial is a pretty good comp for the rough here, right? Especially the off the tee test. I'd say even the around the green test at Memorial is very similar to what we get at the API. And he nearly won that golf tournament, right? So I don't know, sneaky. He's sneaky, that's for sure. He's not a popular pick this week. So if you're going to take some exposure, you don't have to get very much to get over the field. And I think there's enough hope there to take him. Thoughts on Harris English? I think he's got fantastic course history. So if we take a look at that, show him what he's done the last few years. He's gone second, T26, T9 at this event, and then 68th right there 5 years ago. So he's got 3 top 26 finishes, 2 top 9 finishes over his last 3 starts. I think there's enough there to play Harris English, right? If he's somebody that you want to get over the field on, I totally understand it. But he is coming with some ownership, right? So like Kurt Kitayama, for example, where we actually have coming in at slightly lower ownership than what I have Harris English at. I'd rather play Kurt, right? Your past champion, than take somebody like Harris English. But I understand the play too. He's got elite course history, right? Nearly won this golf tournament last year. Let's see. On current form, is Joaquin Niemann the best player in the world? I think you'd have to say that, right? With all the wins, all those top finishes on Live, even when he's not winning golf tournaments. I think so, right? And I think there's a lot of guys on Live you could say that about. DJ is playing really well over there on the Live Golf circuit. The fact that he's like number 200 in the world golf rankings is pretty crazy, isn't it? I just seems a little bit unsustainable. So, well, speaking of Live, we'll talk about some of the Hong Kong event a little bit later, but that'll be towards the tail end of the live stream for anyone looking for that. So in terms of plays, I want to point out, right, our core plays, if you didn't see the video, right, Justin Thomas, Cam Young, Victor Hovland are guys that I want to get well over the field on. But that is far from the only types of players I'm looking at. Based on what I saw on the golf course today, I think that length is going to be a little bit more important because of the fact that the fairways are at least a little bit softer than what they are most years. And I also think that, you know, driving accuracy is pretty much next to 0 in my modeling, right? Like I was looking at it like 5-7%. I'm out there with my model weighting to begin the week. It has gone drastically down, right? Like in terms of driving accuracy, I'm almost not considering it at a golf tournament like this. You just can't be hitting it in the water, right? We can't have guys that are ejecting themselves on some of the water holes. But if you're just hitting it anywhere in the rough, we have such tight fairways out there that you're not going to have a lot of guys that even hit fairways to begin with. So I think the bomb and gouge strategy could be pretty effective this week based on course conditions. So it makes me like guys like Aberg a little bit more. Guys that maybe aren't as accurate off the tee, like a Zalatoris, right? I think you could take him. He's been a little bit of a sprayer after having some of the back injury. Wyndham Clark, I think, is like a fantastic course fit, right? If you're looking for that bomb and gouge approach. Now, not all my lineups, right, are just going to have guys that have this bomb and gouge. But I'm going to have a subset of my lineups, maybe like 10-15%, where I'm really leaning into that strategy. And Wyndham Clark is going to be a huge piece of that. Right? A lot of those lineups where I'm using that bomb and gouge are going to have somebody like him in there. But there are a few other guys that fit that strategy too, right? So just to give you guys a few on here. So in terms of bomb and gouge, like Kurt Kitayama, right, that's how he won this golf tournament, isn't the most accurate driver of the golf ball. If you were going to play somebody like a Minwoo, I'm not, right? You could throw him into that sort of build where you're just kind of like completely ignoring driving accuracy, right? Like Hogard would fit that sort of build if you're just not worried about guys even keeping it on the earth. Benny Ann, another guy you could play that fits that same sort of narrative. Guy cannot hit a fairway for his life. Sahith Theegala, right? Guy hits it a long way, but can't hit fairways. Cameron Young, guys like Sam Burns, Ludwig Aberg, right, would fit that kind of strategy. Rory McIlroy too, right, would fit that strategy as well. You could kind of build lineups with, that correlation on them. And I don't think it's the worst idea. So that's how I've kind of changed my strategy since seeing the golf course. Around the green, I think in general, this course is going to be more difficult than what I thought there on a Monday. So I'm even more so trying to look at your major championship winners, right? Guys that have had a track record of playing well when conditions get super tough, because I think you're going to see that on the weekend, right? Like Thursday, Friday, you're going to see some decent scoring, but especially if the wind kicks up out there for the final 2 rounds, it could become absolute chaos. So that's how I'm attacking this slate. In terms of plays down low, right? Chris Kirk, right, was somebody I talked up on the value plays video. Same thing with Eric Cole and Sepp Straka. These kinds of plays I still like, right? I'm still going to be playing them in my lineups, but I like them slightly less because all 3 aren't the best off the tee players, right? They're not very long off the tee, right? Kirk and Eric Cole and Sepp Straka, which might hurt them, right? If the course is going to play a little bit longer this time. So I'm still using them in lineups. I have not taken them for top 20 bets after seeing the golf course today, right? I wanted to, these were 3 of the players like in particular that I wanted to go to the golf course and check it out today to make sure I could bet them for top 10s, top 20s. And after seeing that it was playing as soft as it was, I'm a little bit less bullish on them, right? And in fact, I stayed away from some of that top 10, that top 20 exposure. Guys that I'm higher on, right? We already went through some of them, right? Like the Benny Ann's, Hogard in particular, right? Like I know we had a question about him before. I absolutely love him this week. Down there at $7,200. He's the exact kind of player that benefits from the kind of conditions that we saw today. That's all I've got for DFS. We'll go over any last second questions when it comes to players. So if you have anyone that you want my full take on, go ahead, let me know down in chat. And then afterwards, we're going to talk some props for PGA, right? Go through some underdog and prize pick stuff. And then afterwards, we'll talk some Puerto Rico Open a little bit. I've done zero research for that. So it's truly going to be a first look. We'll take a first look at the Puerto Rico slate, and then we'll take a look at like Live Golf 2 over there for the Hong Kong event. So let's see, any questions? So we left off with Samuel. He says, thoughts on Adam Schenk? He's got some decent length off the tee, but the form is not there, right? He's not playing very well over the last, 24 rounds, 12 rounds, pretty much no matter what sample you look at. But he's a popper. So I think in large field GBPs, if you're playing DFS, you could throw him in a few lineups and just hope that you get that top end upside. But I wouldn't play him in like a cash lineup or high dollar kind of stuff. It would be just a little bit too risky for my risk tolerance. Can't wait to see how those Scotty, Rory, Minwoo lineups do. With all that chalk in them, I agree with you there. Playing any Tommy Fleetwood, I'm not playing him this week, but I think he's a decent course fit, has a really good track record here. So I understand why people have love for him. The unfortunate part is I don't like the form, right? So at least for me, that's what kept me from playing him, right? He was like number 38 in recent form ranking. And there were other guys around him that I liked more. So Cam Young, JT are 2 of those players, right, that I liked a little bit more. But there's another guy sandwiched in between there who there's only one guy it could possibly be, right, that I like a little bit more than Tommy Fleetwood. That's the only reason I'm not playing him, is I like Willie Z this week. It could be the breakout win for Willie Z. This could be where he gets back on track and reasserts himself as a piece of the PGA Tour. A lot of the volunteers seem to think so. I was talking to a few of them, and there was like a group of like 4 of them. I was like asking them what they saw on the golf course. I was trying to do a little bit more scouting out there on some of the courses, parts of the course that I haven't seen. And he like, who do you think's going to win? Because I was telling him about like the fantasy content I do. I was like, I said Hovland. Is the guy I mentioned, but they all said Zalatoris. All 3 of them that were standing there. So shout out to them. I'm not betting him outright this week or anything, but I do think this is an intriguing spot for him. And if it weren't for him, I'd be playing Tommy Fleetwood. Thoughts on Jason Day? I wish the ownership was lower. Just for transparency's sake, I am playing Jason Day this week, but it's not like he's a leverage play over there at 12.7%, but I do like him. Favorite play, 6.5K and below. I don't think I'm playing anybody that low down the board. I would say Sepp Straka is my favorite, right? He's $6,400, but I think the cheapest player that I'm using is Sepp Straka, I believe. There might be one other guy I'm taking down here towards like the bare bottom end of the board. But yeah, probably Substraka. There's not many down there. Thoughts on Xander? I'm kind of like lukewarm on him. I don't love him. I don't hate him on a week like this. 17.8%. I think it's a fair ownership number. I think the price tag is really solid, right? $9,800. That's more than fair. I like that. What's Cash? Yeah, never heard of her. I don't play Cash myself. Is Cam Young getting steam? Probably. I thought he'd be the highest owned player right down here in the 8K range, and he is, right? 19.7%. But Matty Fitz is nearly 16%. I've got Willie Z at 16.4%. I've even got like a Jason Day at nearly 13%. So is Cam Young at 20% really that bad, right? In comparison, compared to some of the other players, right? Like if we go to the extreme, right, and go, oh, but Cam Young's like more than twice the ownership, right, of a Wyndham Clark and Hideki, like no shit, right? Like that is a big difference. But if we compare him to the rest of the range, or like some of the guys that are an average ownership, I don't know if he's chalky enough. So yeah, he is getting some steam. And honestly, I thought it would be more steam. I thought it'd be like 25% owned. So I'm okay with it. Cam Davis is super low owned. So if you want to know his ownership, let me go ahead and give that to you. So I've got him at 4.4%. So I've got him not getting much steam at all. He's played really poorly here. So I think that's why, the steam's not coming in. He's missed his last 3 cuts, but he hits it a long way, right? He's kind of like Nikolai Hogard in the way where he'll go out there and bruise this golf course with its length. He'll be able to extract himself from some of that rough. Let me double check. I'm like 90% sure that I had him in my last set of lineups, but let me double check on that for you. So he's not in my last set of lineups, but let's just say that after lock, when I go out there and I update my final player pool, there's a good chance that he's one of the last guys in, because when I'm going out there and I'm trying to build these correlated bomber lineups, he's going to have to get into some of those builds, right? Because he fits that mold perfectly. So even if I'm only taking him in those kind of lineups, right, that 10, 15% that I'm leaning into that heavy bomber build, at least I'm going to get some exposure to Cameron Davis. So I like that. Thoughts on Griot? He has a decent track record, also a flusher with the irons. I like him at pretty much any golf course because of that, right? Anytime you have a hot iron player, his putters have been a lot more solid over the last year or so. He's also a tour winner. I like it. You haven't really heard many talking about Fitz with the elite course history. Yeah, the issue I have with him, and please continue to play him because I'm probably going to reverse mush this by even mentioning it. If there was one player on the range who looked disgruntled out there today, it was Matt Fitzpatrick. So I agree with you with the course history. Him and Tommy Fleetwood are both elite level course history guys. The reason why I'm not playing Matty Fitz, Tommy Fleetwood, is because I can't play everyone right up here in the top end of the 8s. Matty Fitz, I'm not playing because of what I saw today. I don't really want to go into a huge detail there because I don't want to sway people off of playing him. But with my 2 eyes, I saw a few things that I didn't like. But like I said, if you were still playing him before, I would continue to play him. Last year, I think I said that John Rahm looked poor on the range, and then he went out there and shot 7 under par. Now, round 2 and round 3, he blew up. All right, so that prophecy ended up coming along, right? His poor play finally caught up to him, right? Rounds 2 and 3. But yeah, I even posted a video of him on the range over there on my Twitter. You can see he's using a bunch of gadgets. He hits a shot and then immediately is just like disgruntled and is not happy with what he's doing. That's just not a good look to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I very well could be wrong, by the way. What about the dynamic duo of Spieth JT as leverage plays? I like the ownership on JT. I'll say that much, right? 13.4% sign me up. Spieth is actually higher owned, which surprises me. And if I'm going to mention the whole Matty Fitz guy playing, like, at least looking a little bit disgruntled, Jordan Spieth hit a perfect drive down 18. I only saw him for 1 hole today. Didn't see him on the range at all. Only saw him for a few golf shots. Hit a perfect drive. I was like, oh, wow, Jordan Spieth driving the ball well. Jordan Spieth week, right? Got to go out there and play him. And then he hit 2 iron shots in a row into the water. So if you're going to take the range report seriously, right, like probably don't play Jordan, right, based on what I saw. Now, I'm a sicko. I'm a huge Jordan Spieth fan, so I'm going to play him regardless. But that was certainly a funny look. He hit the ball in the water, hit the rocks, and then ended up bouncing in. He was like, Michael, let me reload, right? He took another ball, went out there and hit the exact same spot again. So at least he's consistent, right? He went out there and hit the literal same spot. I don't think he's that worried about his game, though, because he was practicing for some of the game-winning situations. Some of like the layups on 18, right? If you're trying to win a golf tournament and you don't want to actually go for the Sunday pin, he was practicing that layup. He was also practicing the chip shot from there back to that back right pin location, which they only use on Sundays over there at the API. So if I even said that on the Twitter post I posted earlier, I was like, if he's practicing for the Sunday situation, right, some of that situational golf, and the only reason you would lay up on 18, by the way, is if you have like a lead heading into that hole. So if he's still thinking that he might win this golf tournament, I probably wouldn't worry about it, right? So that's why I'm saying the thing with Matty Fitz, right? Maybe he was just working on something, right? And wasn't happy with that specific aspect he was working on. Could easily still win this golf tournament. But yeah, Jordan Spieth, 2 water balls. He does always look disgruntled. You're right. He's never happy with his play. And he plays some good golf. Like, come on, give yourself some credit, right? Hey, Luke, you were curious if I like more Cabo this week. You were thinking about one and done and maybe see a little bit of leverage off the chalk. If you're looking to get different, he's perfect for that, right? He's low on his DFS. I think in one and done, he's going to essentially be unowned, right? Like maybe 1-2% owned at the very most in that kind of format. If you're trying to get different and you're okay playing somebody that's not the best course fit, then go with it. The caveat there, right? And the little asterisk you got to put on the play is that I don't think it's the best course fit. Part of that is agronomy. He's just kind of a little bit average over there on Bermuda grass. And on top of that, it's a course where I'm looking for a little bit of length, right? I'm looking for some of that strength, that club head speed to get out of that longer rough, which he doesn't have. So I think it's situational, right? If you need to get different, if you, especially in like one and done, you're chasing, you're trying to move up the leaderboard, he's got winning upside, winning pedigree. He does it at least like once a year, right? Goes out there, wins a golf tournament, sometimes 2-3 times a year. That feels like a great spot in one and done. Thoughts on Justin Rose? So I'm a little bit conflicted on Rose. I always like the upside because he just pops off out of nowhere. And usually when he's playing well, he top tens. And a lot of times it's been at majors. It's been at these kind of events, right? Signature events over the last year or so. He's like that. And same thing with Adam Scott. It's so strange, right? Like Adam Scott, Justin Rose, extremely inconsistent on tour. And I got to say, Adam Scott has been a lot more consistent lately. I mean, look at this, number 5 in the field when it comes to recent form ranking. But typically, right, they're hit or miss. And at these big time events, they tend to hit a lot compared to their other events. I'm okay with it. That's why I like him. The reason why I don't like him is he's not playing that well, unfortunately. The form's not really great. You feel like it's Aberg's big moment this week? I could see it. He played here as an amateur last year and finished in the top 25, which is extremely impressive. I'm not a huge believer in Pavon yet. It could very well be a blind spot, but I think he comes back down to earth. Is this the week that a long shot won't win? I'll say that, right, it's been the year of the long shot. It's going to be tough to change that. At the same time, though, this type of setup where it's difficult, that long, rough, major championship type of conditions lends itself towards a better champion, right? Towards somebody that's probably like 30-1 or lower. So I would say it's a good week for it, but it's been the year of the long shot. So who the hell knows? That's for sure. All right, let's talk some props now. Let me go ahead and bring up Underdog Fantasy. If you were here just for the DFS stuff, some of the betting talk, appreciate you guys. We're still going to go through some of the stuff on Underdog and Prize Picks now. Of course, also some Hard Rock Bet stuff, both for Live Golf and PGA. So still plenty to go through. But if you're a DFS only player, still appreciate you guys stopping by. Go ahead, smash that like button on the way out of here if you're that type of person. And if not, we still got a whole lot more to talk through here. Which, speaking of, let me get some coffee in me and let's go ahead and talk some props, shall we? So based on what I saw today, we can probably add some exposure here. So I've already got some slips in. You know, if we don't see any additional value, I'll just give you guys a few of the props that I already have in. But now that I've seen the course setup, I'm thinking we might have a little bit of value to take here. So I'm going to scroll through. I'm going to see if there's been any line movement. And as we do so, I guess we'll talk about what I'm looking for here. What I'm looking for is potentially unders on greens regulation. Now, I took some overs on Prize Picks because they have the board priced a little bit lower than what we have in Underdog. So, for example, somebody like, let me find a good one here. So like a Cameron Young, for example, they've got him at 12.5 greens. Over here on the underdog side, well, on Prize Picks is at 11.5 greens, right? So there's a whole green difference there. I'd be looking for unders on greens over here in the underdog. I had some overs on Prize Picks for greens in regulation, which I'm still okay with, but maybe not as bullish on now that I know the greens are bouncy, right? We saw, especially the long irons today, were bouncing quite a bit out there on the green complexes. So some PM players, so some guys going off a little bit later for under on greens, feels like it might be a vibe. So let's see what we've got here. So Xander Schauffele, we've got him at 12.5. I believe on Prize Picks he was at 12.5 or 12. So that one's only a 1 green discrepancy. Colin Morikawa, I believe they had 12.5 over there on Prize Picks. Rory McIlroy, same thing. I believe he was also at 12.5 greens. So what I'm looking for here is I'm trying to find like a full green discrepancy, which there were a few we already took. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen and do a little peek at what I took before. So it was Wyndham Clark's one. And who was the other? I guess it was just Wyndham Clark that we ended up taking. So let's throw Wyndham into there. I'll bring up my screen again for you guys, and we'll find a few pairings. So Wyndham Clark hopefully is still at 12.5 greens. He may have been bumped. That's always a possibility with underdog and their devious ways, of course. So let's get Clark knocked in there. He's at 12 greens now. So they did bump him an entire green lower, which is a little bit disappointing. So I'd say there's still a little bit of value there. So I'll at least throw it in the shopping cart. Ideally, I would say PM fades are a little bit better than morning fades, just because of the course getting a little bit firmer as the day goes on. I don't hate a fade on Hideki if he couldn't play in the Pro-Am. If he's dealing with a back injury, he might withdraw, which of course would end up being a void over there on this leg. But if he plays, I have to think that he might be a little bit tight when it comes to his play. So even with a morning tee time, I'd probably still take that fade on Decky, knowing that the greens aren't as receptive as they could be. They have Tom Kim at 12 greens. He's a morning tee time, so maybe we stay away there. Let's try and find some of the guys teeing off around midday. So they've got Sahith at 11.5. Ideally, I want guys at 12 or higher when it comes to the fades. Let's see. Like, we could throw Cam Young into here. Like, I don't hate that. I think Cam Young is going to play well. I think he could still shoot well under par, even if he goes under this green regulation prop here. But he's a PMT time. I think the average for round one is going to be around like 10.5, maybe 11 greens regulation per round, which if it's 11 greens regulation, right? And I think that's towards the higher end of that average. I mean, he'd be a whole green and a half higher, right, than that field average. So I like these two unders on Hideki and Clark. Right, at worst, I think they're 1 green higher than what you have the field average at. And, Cam Young's a whole 1.5 discrepancy compared to that. Let's see. This is already juiced 0.9x, or else I would maybe consider that one. I think 12 for Jordan Spieth is actually pretty fair for a player of his caliber. Xander Schauffele at 12.5 it's again fair for somebody of his caliber. Even Morikawa at 13. Like I don't think it's he is at 12.5 on Prize Picks, but I don't think it's the worst projection at 13. Let's see what else we got. So Lowry 11.5. That's probably a stay away. 12 for Aberg. I took his over at 11.5 on Prize Picks, which again, on Prize Picks, I don't think is the worst play, but at the same time, it's slightly worse, I would say, with the fact that the greens aren't quite as soft is what I was thinking, or at least as you would expect, right? They got a bunch of rain, and they're still pretty firm, which is impressive from the golf course. So they've got Corey Connors at 12.5. He is also at that number over on Prize Picks, so that's not a discrepancy. And then the last guy on the board would be the Justin Thomas, who they have at 12. Let's go ahead and go with this first slip. So it's going to be these three that we're taking over there. Apparently got to refresh my page, which we'll do. What's the harm in that? And then I'll enter these three. So the underdog slip we're going to go with here for the stream will be 3 unders on greens. It says it's a 5.14x payout, which this is the champions mode. So it's probably a little bit different for everyone else out there, but it should be right around a 5x payout. No matter what format that you're using. And I can't enter any money on these. Right down here in Florida, they banned Pick'em, but these are definitely props that I'd consider taking. So go ahead and mix them in. I'm going to post this to my Patreon page after we go live here. And now let's take a look at some of the Prize Picks stuff, which I actually can't even bring up. Prize Picks has banned you from even looking at the board over here in Florida. So I'll just give you guys some of the exposure that I'm getting to. So let me bring up my Patreon and we'll just talk through it together. And again, it's not going to be on the screen. So if you're somebody that is watching, right, but not listening, you're probably going to have a little bit of a tough time here, but we'll bear through this together. So see, the green regulation props that I took, we're probably going to stay away from, but some of the stroke stuff that I was taking, I still really like over there on Prize Picks. So what we're going to do is we're going to take an under on Corey Connors at 72 strokes. Hopefully he's not moved from 72 strokes, and mix that up with a Nikolai Hogard under 72 strokes. Now, I literally can't check the Prize Picks board, so those may have bumped since I posted them last night. So let me know down in chat if that has happened on both of those. But yeah, an under on Corey Connors and under over there on Nikolai Hogard, two players with early tee times. That was the main idea with those two. Again, Thursday, I think, is the day where you're going to see this golf course taken apart a little bit, partially due to the low winds, partially due to it being at, a little bit receptive out there for the first few days, which is why I think you see a scoring average right around even par. I think there's even the chance we see a scoring average slightly under par out there for Thursday. So somebody like Hogard and Connors, which will have some of the best conditions of anyone out there, are players that I think are going to be at least average, right, over there on average. So on average, going to be at least tour average players. That's a little bit of a mouthful there, but that is why I like those two players. They're relatively consistent. They're two guys that I think are slightly better players than some of their counterparts. And Corey Connors has a decent track record here. Nikolai Hogard did play here once 2 years ago and missed the cut. So he doesn't quite have the kind of course history that we have with Corey Connors, but still a player I would take for the under out there in round one. So it'll be those two. The rest of the Prize Pick stuff that I took were some overs on greens. I think it was, I'll give you guys two of them. I think it was Will Zalatoris was one. I think another one was, I got to double check. It's bad that I can't remember that. It's so much shit. Going to the golf course, a lot of information downloading over there on the Marine. But yeah, Justin Thomas at 11.5 was another one. So if you want to mix in JT and Zalatoris for an over on greens, I still think they're leans for the over, but I thought they were going to be much better plays if we had dartboards for greens. So I'd probably stick to those two stroke props. But now let's talk a little live golf, I should say, over there for the Hong Kong event. So let me bring up the Live Golf website. We'll take a look at the golf course. I'll give you guys an idea for what I'm looking at on that side. And we can talk some Puerto Rico Open too, if there are any questions about that. I've got to say, Puerto Rico Open, I've done literally 0 seconds of research for. I'm not playing it this week. I'm not doing projections for it either. So I just have no interest looking at it. Frankly, with that kind of field, it's a stronger field this year. I understand why some people are watching it, but it's just not for me. It's just too much golf, right? One full elevated field event is enough golf for me. Let's just say that much. So let me bring this up. So I've got the Live Golf stuff up. Let's find the golf course. I don't want to purchase tickets. What are we doing here? Course information is what we're looking for here. Go over any questions in chat. Do I still play underdog? Yes. Free slips. I can't answer them for the money I was wishing, right, or I was doing in the past, but I'm still letting everyone down here enter their own slips. Anyone that is still playing underdog, I'm giving all that advice to, and I'm putting the same, if not more time in, right? I can't enter my prop slips, and I went up to the Pro-Am, right, and spent 6 hours today driving to make sure that my people had that analysis. So if anyone thinks that there's going to be a drop-off in effort because I can't enter my own slips, you'd be very mistaken. Let's say that much. How am I making Prize Picks bets in Florida? I'm not, Nick. Those are, again, props that I'm letting other people enter. I can't enter them myself. Those are different slips that I told other people to enter. And there are other ways around that, but I'm not going to implicate myself on a live stream, right? Sean says, you took some fairways over on Prize Picks that are one higher on underdog. What do I think about guys such as Fleetwood at 8 or Rory at 8? I think that because of the soft conditions, you're going to see a slightly higher fairway average. So if you can find some line value I don't think that's the worst idea at all. So you're saying you're taking them on Prize Picks, and they're at what, like 9 fairways over there on the underdog side? I think Fleetwood's a really good choice, right? He's an accurate driver. He's kind of known for that in terms of his play. And then somebody like Rory at 8, I'm okay with. I think it's a lean towards the over, but I would prefer somebody that's a little bit more accurate and somebody that wasn't like number 170 on tour last year in accuracy. Rory has been a lot more accurate lately. If you take a look at his last like 12 measured rounds, he's played pretty well in terms of hitting fairways, but that's only like a recent thing, right? That's only been like the last 2-3 events that he's been hitting fairways. So be a little cautious there, I would say. All right, let's talk some live golf. If you have any questions about PGA, if it's DFS, if you're just hopping in now, obviously you can still ask down in chat. But the focus for the next 10, 20 minutes here is going to be on this live golf event, which I don't even think they played here last year. So let me go ahead and bring up Data Golf 2. I think this is like a brand new event for them. I'm not a live hardo, so I don't necessarily follow all their events. So yeah, looks like this is the first iteration. They weren't in Hong Kong last year. I'm out there for the event. So all of this is going to be brand new information for all of us out here. So it's a par 70. It's short as hell. It's only 6,700 yards. And what I know about golf courses in Asia, Asian tour events in particular, that's really where all of my experience with these golf courses come from, are all super narrow. They're short as hell, right? They're normally like 6,700 yards, like what we have here. And oftentimes, it's probably not the case with this course. The live golf course is probably not going to be one with OB on every single hole. But a lot of times, these Asian golf courses, whether it's Chinese courses, Japanese courses, really that entire continent, the courses have OB down every single fairway. Like you miss the fairway by 3 yards and they have OB stakes. Now, based on this overhead look, it's not like that, right? They have this down as green patch. They don't have it marked as OB. But what I would imagine they have here are extremely narrow fairways. I'm talking like 10, maybe 15 yard wide fairways. So that's why it's so short, right? Not a lot of guys are going to hit driver around this golf course. So you'll see there's a few par 5s, or there's 2 par 5s. Both of them are going to be easily reachable in 2. The issue is going to be, right, not being blocked out by trees. And actually, I want to look up a picture of this golf course. So it's Hong Kong Golf Club. I want to see what it looks like from like the overhead views. So why not bring it up? All right. Let me share my screen and let's see what we're working with. Because if there's a bunch of trees in between every single hole, like I expect, it's going to be about driving accuracy. Oh, look at this. This actually looks beautiful. There is dense forest in between every single hole, which doesn't look that far from the fairway. I mean, look at this, right? This is a par 3, so it's probably not the best example to use. Let's see. So this looks like a pretty wide open area, but look at this, right? On the right side, it's like 5, maybe 10 yards off the right side are these just massive dense trees. The left side, right? You've got like maybe 15 yards of room, and then you've got this massive patch of trees. Bryson's going to have some trouble, right? Like some of these guys that sprayed off the tee, like a Matthew Wolf, are going to have some problems around this kind of golf course. So this doesn't start till Friday. So I guess we don't have to be completely set on this until next live stream or out there tomorrow. But yeah, this looks like a tree-lined golf course. It looks like if you miss in the forest pretty much no matter what hole you're on, it looks like you pretty much have a lost ball. Ugh. I guess if you were really dialed in with your driver, right, and you were trying to take on all of these super short par 4s, you could probably go out there and post a low score, but it's just so many ticking time bombs out there for these players. So you've got holes like 16 through 18 that are all 411 yards or shorter. Those are all going to get eaten alive. 144-yard par 3 will be eaten alive. 149 out there, hole number 2 is also going to be a hole that these guys just make a shit ton of birdies on. I think that the scoring average, you're going to see a shit ton of birdies. I think you might see a birdie average of like 4, maybe in like 4.5 per round, especially if it's going to play soft out there at this Hong Kong Golf Club. But with all those trees, and like there's a few tough holes, right? Like hole 9's 493, 11's 466. So like there are at least a few holes out there that look somewhat difficult for these players to take on, where there's going to be a lot of bogeys too, right? Like if you hit in the trees, that's a bogey, like almost guaranteed. You don't hit the fairway on like this 500-yard par 4, you're probably screwed, right? It feels like a volatile scoring week. So over there for Live Golf on like Underdog and Prize Picks, I probably want to look at some overs on birdies. That's at least my first instinct out there. And then potentially over on strokes for sprayers for guys that maybe aren't as accurate off the tee. That feels like a decent strategy to consider. Let's see. Yeah, and Fleetwood's 9.5 under, and he's minus 125 juice on a sports book. Yeah, that makes 9.5 is a pretty high projection, isn't it? Yeah, and then it's a whole 1.5 discrepancy. Yeah, I like the middle on that, Sean. I think that middle's like a solid 20-25% of the time. And as long as your juice, right, isn't like 20-25%, I think that you can make that a profitable middle there. So I like what you're doing there, Sean. Yeah, I think in general, you're probably going to see a slightly higher fairway average this year compared to most. I would say right around 8 would be a pretty accurate average for the field. So somebody like Tommy Fleetwood probably projects for like 8.5, right? Someone in that range. Damn good middle is what it seems like to me. That's all I've got for this live stream, though, guys. In terms of the Live Golf stuff, if I was going to bet outright for this event, right, just based on what we saw, right, it's going to be a very narrow course, very short golf course. Like, I don't love the John Rahms at this track. Now, he could easily still win. He's the best player in Live Golf. No shit. He can win this golf tournament. I don't love a Bryson either in terms of value. I'd be looking for guys that aren't as off the tee heavy, right? So Louis Oosthuizen is playing some amazing golf, whether it's DP World Tour, Asian Tour, Live Tour. He has been posting a lot of top results here in 2024. This is like a perfect track for him. Cameron Smith, right? If it's a track where you don't have to hit a bunch of drivers and he's not missing into those long, deep forests that they have out there, it could be a golf course for him. Like Abraham Answer, right? I would think would be a decent course fit. A Paul Casey would even fit this course up. Patrick Reed, you know what? I'm going to bet Patrick Reed this week. This is going to be the outright bet that I end up taking for Live Golf because it's not an off the tee heavy golf course, right? And Patrick Reed, proven winner internationally, has not won on Live Golf yet, is kind of waiting for that to happen. 40-1 feels like a really good number, and it's the kind of golf course that he would win out on the PGA Tour, right? One that kind of de-emphasizes that off the tee play. Ooh. Kind of like Cam Smith. He's got to keep it out of that force. He's got to keep it out of the shit to go out there and win. But, when we compare the fact that Reed is 40-1 and Caleb Surratt is 60-1, or even guys like a Matthew Wolff, right, are also 40-1 to win this golf tournament, like Paul Casey, for example, right, is that same number. Patrick Reed at 40-1 makes absolutely no sense. So I love that. I'm going to put $100 on him to win. So we'll win $4,000 if he ends up winning this golf tournament. But based on what we're looking at, again, we don't know much about this golf course, to my knowledge. I don't think they played it last year on a Live Golf schedule. Looks like one potentially where the off the tee play is not as important, and that shouldn't be a hot take, right? It's 6,700 yards. It's it would be the shortest course on the PGA Tour by like 200 yards if they went out there and played it. Should there be any consideration on birdies and eagles this week? Yeah, of course, especially for fantasy, right? Birdies and eagles are always important when it comes to fantasy scoring. For like outrights and stuff like that, I don't think there needs to be any extra emphasis, right? A lot of that is just built in to the shots gained metrics that you're using. It's a tough golf course. So it's not like I'm looking at birdie or better percentage for a golf tournament like this. At least when I'm looking for outrights, winners, top 10s, top 20s. I am looking at it for fantasy, though, right? That is always important when it comes to a player's fantasy score. There are guys that routinely score more fantasy points than a lot of other guys that score at the same spot on the leaderboard. We call those players that are essentially, in my database, I mark them down as shots gained fantasy score, right? Guys that routinely have a higher fantasy score than their peers. That matters from that perspective. When I'm going out there and I'm making my golf projections and doing all of that on a Monday, that's when I'm looking at that kind of stuff. But not when it comes to a winner, I would say. It's just a little bit too difficult of a golf course. Somebody mentioned that we had pin locations before, so I'm going to go ahead and at least bring them up here for a second. So hole number 1 looks like, I don't know, pretty average pin. Hole 2's tough, little back left tucked. That's tougher than I thought they'd go with hole round number 1. Hole number 3 is tucked near the water. Oh boy. I can already tell. All right, so here's what they're doing with the pins. I normally try and find a theme, right, with the pins that we have. Undoubtedly, they are protecting the golf course. They know the forecast that we're getting, right? These tour officials aren't dumb. They know what windy.com is. They go on here, they look at the same type of stuff that we do, and they know that it's going to be no wind and essentially perfect out there for Thursday. And because this is an event that historically, right, protects par pretty well, let's look what they're doing. Tucking it over a bunker in hole 1. Back pin on the tough par 3. Putting it near the water on 3. 4 is a back pin. 5, whatever. That's a pretty average pin location. But 6, tucked in the back near the water. 7, tucked over a bunker. 8, tucked near the water. 9, whatever. Like, that's a pretty easy pin location. But look at 11, right? Tucked near the water on the left. 12, back pin location, tucked near the right. 13, guess where it is? It's a front pin location, but it's right next to the water. 14 is pretty damn close to that left bunker. 15, it's a front pin, but it's tucked just over a greenside bunker. 16, back in the back corner. Like, these pins all suck. Like, even this hole 18 pin, where it's like at the center of that green, that's one of the hardest pin locations when it comes to water balls, because you can miss it short right, you can miss it just far right because it's tucked over here in the center. It's they're not taking it easy on these players. Let's say that much. So the course setup is perfect. This is what you want to see, right? As just a fan of golf, is them somewhat trying to protect against guys nuking the golf course, which I could see, right? With this kind of weather forecast, like 3 birdies per round average is not going to happen, right? It's probably going to be closer to like 4 birdies per round out there tomorrow. That would be if they had like normal pin locations. Because they have these harder pins, it's going to take back from that a little bit, right? It's probably going to lower your birdie average 0.1, 0.2. It is definitely going to raise your bogey or worse average. Having some of these difficult pin locations. It's I would say it doesn't affect our prop exposure that much, but it is unexpected. I'm kind of glad they're going out there and not taking it easy on the players, because there's a chance we could have had like a -8, -9 round tomorrow. If they set it up like a moving day pin locations, and luckily they avoided that. And speaking of, actually, I wanted to look at Puerto Rico Open, so let's look at that. So we're going to bet Patrick Reed as soon as I get off live stream when it comes to the live golf events. But for Puerto Rico, now I'm not going to bet any of the guys at the top of the board. Out of principle, I'm not betting Aaron Wright 25-1, Hogart at 14-1. Like laugh my ass off. That's I was going to say something. That's one of the worst ideas I think I've ever seen in my life. Chris Goddard up 20-1. Like, what are we doing? Like how could anyone possibly want to click Goddard up at 20-1? This is a week for a long shot, right? So maybe one of these guys does break through for their first win. Like, good for them, right? If they go out there and do so. If you're going to bet anyone at the Puerto Rico Open, it's got to be somebody a little bit grimy, right? It's got to be a true long shot, in my opinion. And I think this like 60 to 75 range, there were a few guys catching my eye. So I'm not sure if I'm going to bet any of these, but in terms of guys that were catching my eye, Justin Sutt 40-1 was somebody that, at least gave a few thoughts to going out there and outright betting. Cameron Champ, I'll always consider betting at like an alternate field event. This is a little bit of a stronger alternate field than what we've had in the past, but 30-1, like if I was going to take one of the suckers up top, like one of these guys, 30, 25-1, 20-1, it'd be Cameron Champ. But my instinct tells me that I'm probably going to take more of a long shot. And that's what I think we're going to see, right, in terms of a winner. And I don't even hate some of the new guys. So like somebody that catches my eye would be like a Chandler Phillips. He's been playing a lot better than people know. And he's a proven winner on some of the other tours that he's played on. It's a tough week. And again, I've done zero research over here for the Puerto Rico Open. So just being as transparent as I can, I'll probably end up betting somebody over there for the golf tournament by the time we get to lock, but it's going to be somebody further down the board. In fact, I would even go down to 100-1 and potentially think about taking some of these guys. And just to give you a few that catch my eye, like Joel Damon at 75-1. Maybe I'm an absolute sucker, right? But he's won at an alternate field before over there at the Corrales. Like, I'd rather take a shot on Joel Damon at 75-1 than bet Goddard up at 20. Like, it's not even, like, Goddard up at 20 is maybe the worst betting number that I've ever seen when it comes to outright betting. So Don't be a sucker, I would say, and go out there and, bet some of these guys at sub 25 to 1. It's just probably not the event to go out there and do so. Any last second stuff? Looks like we're good. Alrighty, guys. That's all I've got here for the live stream. Appreciate all the support here as per usual. We will be doing live streams for rounds 2 through 4. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of those when they drop. I'll likely be going live sometime during the evening, right after play ends. So if play ends around like 5:36, expect to see a live stream on the channel around like 7:30 p.m. I'll be doing one when I'm up there for Saturday as well. That'll be for the round 4 live stream. So that'll be an on the road one. I'll have to see where I'm able to do the live stream from. I'm over there at my family's house and figure something out. So I'm looking forward to it, guys. Best of luck out there with all of your exposure, whether it's for outrights, DFS, all of that. And let's have ourselves a week.